Alright, so I'm out here in the garage and I'm going to talk through how to install insulation. Now, as you saw in the bathroom, that wall's pretty much done. I don't need to do anything else to it. So I have a little mock-up down here that I'm going to use to demonstrate how to install insulation. So let's start with tools and materials we're going to need for this project. So we'll start at the upper left-hand corner with the dust mask. We've got some leather palm gloves there. I also have an insulation knife. And you notice the blade is a lot longer than a standard like utility knife. There is a utility knife there. Then we have some goggles, Sharpie marker, tape measure. We've got our insulation, and this particular insulation is by Johns Manville and it's R13. I like to use this insulation because it doesn't really make your skin itch like some of the other fiberglass insulations that are out there. Down here we have a straight edge board. It's a 1x4 that we're going to use as our guide to cut the insulation. We've got a plywood board so we can set the insulation across that and not dull our knife by trying to cut it on the floor. And then, like I said, there's our mock-up, which is 13 1/16 of an inch tall. And it has 16-inch on center spacing. And I'm also wearing a long sleeve shirt. Alright, so I've got the plywood on the floor here and I've got the insulation down ready to be cut. And the general rule of thumb is you want to make your insulation a 1/2 inch wider and a 1/2 inch longer than the cavity in which you're installing it. So you'll see that on a 16-inch on center wall stud spacing, which is what these insulation bats are made for, that the bats are actually 15 inches wide, and of course a 16-inch on center wall spacing is 14.5 inches wide. So in our case, with our mock-up, we have 16-inch on center stud spacing, and then the height is 13 1/16 of an inch. So what I've done here is measured from this end of the insulation down to 13 9/16 by adding that 1/2 inch, and I did the same thing on the other side. So next we'll take our 1x4 straight edge and we'll lay it across those two marks. And then we'll make a cut along the straight edge. Now you can use a utility knife to cut the insulation, and most people have this around their house somewhere. I personally like to use one of these insulation knives. I think it's a lot easier to cut the insulation using one of these knives, especially if you have to cut a lot of insulation. Now the blade on these utility knives is just way too short in my opinion. This is the grip that I usually use when I'm holding the insulation knife. You can also try it like this. And you can see on the opposite side, the index finger's right here in this indent. The blade of this knife is very sharp, so you're going to want to make sure you have gloves on. Just compress the insulation like that, and then that's it. So in our bathroom we're using unfaced insulation, but I have this face insulation. That's the only thing I have. So if you were to install face insulation, just for grins here, how it would go is you would get your bat put in there. You start at the top of the wall, just kind of work your way down. You don't want to compress it at all, too much there. Then you have these flanges here that you would staple to the face of the wall stud. Now if you're doing an interior wall and you're going to be putting up drywall and you're going to put glue on the wall to hold the drywall up on the wall, then you might consider putting the flanges on the side, which will compress your insulation though. Then you would just staple the flange to the side of the stud there. Alright, so I've taken the paper off the insulation and I'm going to go ahead and install it in the cavity. Start at the top here. Just kind of lightly set it in there, work our way down the wall. And because we've cut it to a 1/2 inch longer than the wall cavity height, we have good fill there. We don't have any gaps on the sides, the top, or the bottom. And then the other thing you want to make sure that you don't do, like I said, is you don't want to compress it because you want it to fill the whole depth of the wall cavity. So that's it for installing insulation. It's really pretty simple. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for future videos. Visit our website at DIYapprentice.com.